be a very clear contradiction, because the prophecy of Jonah was not death. It was the very opposite, that he was alive. Now, with respect to him dying, if indeed Jesus did indeed in a way die, because to be perfectly honest, he did everything he could to die. He let himself be arrested. He didn't argue once in the court case against the accusations, which is what Pilate was amazed at. He then got arrested, got put on the cross, was still there for 3 hours, and then he fainted. So to all intents and purposes, from his position, he did indeed die. And to be honest, that could quite easily be said to be a metaphorical death, in that he was willing to give up his life. And if you read in the Bible, it does say, with respect to, right after it says, there's a passage, I can't remember where it is, there's a passage that says, I will die and then come back to life. He doesn't actually say that. Somebody else says that he said that. But then it's quoted exactly what he says afterwards. And he says that he who is willing to give up his soul for the sake of God, he is truly alive. And he who is not willing to give up his soul for the sake of God, he is truly dead. And so this, in a way, is an explanation for me as to what he meant when he said he would die. It means that he was willing to give up everything up. That is essentially what I find. But the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, and
for example, the quotation, the prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. If he knew that he was going to die, does it make sense that he would spend an entire night praying for deliverance? Isn't there an intrinsic contradiction there? If he also knew that, if he had also been told that he was going to die, doesn't it make sense that when he feels death coming, he suddenly says, "Why have you forsaken me?" Where is the forsaking?
The Gospels give different accounts on that point.
Fair enough. I mean,
yeah.
But let's just say we are going to have, nobody's going to walk away with, we're not all going to walk away with a unified belief. But nevertheless, this is our interpretation of the events, and we feel that the evidence kind of corroborates to give us one story.
Yes, that quotation is back from the Old Testament, the direct quotation from Jonah's thing at the end, where he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus Christ actually quotes that.
Exactly.
From the Old Testament.
That doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't say it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Dan. I'll get to you in a second. Dan.
Yeah, I was quite intrigued by the extracts from the Quran.
Sorry, could you speak up, please?
Oh yeah, I was quite intrigued by the extracts from the Quran where it says that they effectively says that he did move to Kashmir.
Yes.
And then what you said about globalization and information spreading.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, what your take was on, like, if that's how it played out, how did they know, the person who wrote that passage?
Well, most Muslims would claim that the Quran is the revealed word of God, and God knows things.
Oh, right.
Sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, just I'm not going to say much. I'm just going to prompt.
By the way, may I introduce Aaron Khan? He's got the biggest website called tombofjesus.com, and if you want to find information about this, I've really just given you the tip of the iceberg. There's an actual fact, it's a documentary, isn't it, that he's the UK distributor for, so you can take their names from you. Yeah, and it costs £10. It's a fantastic documentary that's coming out. It's called Jesus in India, where they go all over India, and they go all over Tibet and Kashmir and his time. But anyway, sorry, Karen.
So much for keeping a low profile.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to mention St. Thomas, Catholic tradition about St. Thomas travelling to India.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah, when you were talking about, I can't remember the question, I'm afraid, but when you were talking, it reminded me of, there's actually Thomas, and the tomb of St. Thomas they claim to have, it's always been claimed to be in India as well. And if you go to Thomas, for example, and you meet Christians in Thomas, 90% of the Christians there are called Thomas, because Thomas is like the patriarch of the Christians in India. He's their patron. And so the idea that Jesus solely went to Kashmir, and he solely went to these areas, and none of the disciples knew about him, yes, that's what it was, none of the disciples knew about him, that in a way is belied by the fact that Thomas is always known to have actually gone to Kashmir, and his tomb has been found there for the last few centuries.
No, in India, you mean?
In India?
In India, yeah, in South India. But essentially it's an indication that some of the disciples at least were trying to find out where he had actually gone. And at least one of them went to India.
It's perhaps an indication that they knew he was in that area.
Something that has always interested me, whatever scriptures we look at, is that Jesus' actual family and his, I suppose, adoptive father, Joseph, they all fade into the background very quickly. Now, my understanding is that in the Middle East, family life is quite close. And I always found it strange that somehow Jesus sort of went off and these other people just disappeared like characters in a play.
Well, they didn't actually disappear. I mean, well, in a sense they did disappear in that it's well, like I said, it's in the lecture, it's well known that Mary just wasn't seen again. After Jesus ascended to heaven, Mary disappeared, which is why there is the Feast of the Day of Assumption, because it is assumed that she also ascended to heaven with Jesus. Now, that in actual fact for me is a very strong piece of evidence that Mary must have gone somewhere as well.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right in my opinion that it bears witness to the fact that she must have gone with Jesus somewhere. And it also shows that the people who... Yeah,
She has a house near Ephesus in Turkey, and I've been there.
Yes.
The location was revealed by the dreams, illusions that a German nun had in the 19th century that Inigo is supposed to be there. One of the houses anyway. One question I have for you is that it's not an unknown phenomenon that when people become very famous and they supposedly die, they then reappear. There's a strong vested interest in people reappearing. When Che Guevara died when he was killed in Bolivia, he appeared to peasants in Cuba as an image. Elvis has been spotted in shopping centres, etc.
Jesus has been spotted in fried eggs and cakes.
Exactly. Even Hitler being seen
Exactly, yes.
places. I mean, it's when someone becomes so loved as Jesus was and is still. I mean, there's a psychological phenomenon to explain his reappearance.
That is true.
That's true.
That is true on an individual basis, on an individual person-to-person basis. But I think the thing in that kind of situation is that it's very difficult then to explain, if that is indeed the phenomenon that's going on, it's very difficult then to explain multiple bits of evidence popping up in the scriptures of religions that are really kind of unrelated. For example,